The following episode may contain sensitive material, including descriptions of violence, sexual assault, or graphic descriptions of injuries to victims. If you feel you may be triggered by such material, please consider this before accessing our content. To access trauma counseling or services, please speak to a trauma specialist.
Next thing, lightning sound, bala 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 bala. Yeah. I went like this.
This was one of the first lightning cases in South Africa which captured the imagination of the public.
I don't want to be recognized because this topic is a very sensitive topic. In my culture, we believe that the more you entertain the topic of lightning, the more it follows you. And it takes a lot of cleansing for you to get it out of you. I'm going to tell you a story about what I witnessed. It was a very scary moment because it happened at a funeral. That day, I remember I woke up and wore my favorite red dress because I was feeling a bit low. I wanted to brighten up everything. And then my aunt said I must go and change. It's raining outside. And I said, why? So she said to me, I must take off my red dress before we go because when you wear red, it's associated with lightning. And when it's cloudy, we don't usually wear red because they say you're going to attract the lightning to strike you. So she made me change that dress and then I wore black. So we drove. On our way there, she was talking about how the weather is looking. We were not sure if we should take our umbrellas or not. When we got there, the skies were bright. There was no sign of, a heavy storm. It just looked like it was going to drizzle. I remember even during the service when we arrived, everyone had umbrellas ready on them. And, funerals are very sad. The family was there. There was a lot of people there to support as well. The pastor had his service at the home under a white tent. And then he also said, it's a beautiful day and it looks like it's going to rain later. And then we were just saying it's blessings. Rain, because we see rain as blessings. So our pastor had his service. He had the service. They prayed for everything. Then it was time to head to the graveyard to bury the deceased. And then we all left in a convoy and drove the clouds. No sign of rain, but there were people who had raincoats already, who had umbrellas ready. The sun was out. Now it stopped drizzling. So we were even excited that it's not going to be rain, but we could hear a little bit of thunder in the sky. When we got there, the family was under the tent next to the grave where all family members can be, comforting each other. And I remember I stood next to the tent and then the whole community that came to show support was standing around the grave. But closer to the grave was a group of men, including the victim. They were standing by the grave, waiting to help with the coffin. What happened was we were singing a hymn. It was time for the coffin to also go down. And then next thing, we started hearing a few thunder sounds, like boo, 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 boo. Then we were like, it's gonna start raining. While we were getting ready to move back to our cars because it was starting to look like it's going to rain. The victim, he had shovels and he was getting ready to take them back to the car. Next thing, lightning sound, bala 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 bala. Yeah. I went like this, down. When you looked around after that sound, most people were down and holding their heads. And then three guys had fainted and they were down, so they were trying to get up, and then the fourth guy wasn't getting up. It was a very, very scary moment because everyone was not sure what happened, so we were like checking ourselves with what happened. We thought the guy fainted. Next thing we hear that no, it might have been the lightning that struck him. So it was very scary. Everyone got evacuated very fast, and paramedics started coming in. It was a sad moment burying someone, and now we are worried about someone else on the floor. It was just a really sad moment. They took him in the paramedics' car, rushed him to hospital. So we all left and went back to the home where there was a funeral. They tried to calm us down and say, no, he's gonna be okay, he's okay. Later that day, around 5, we heard that he passed away. I even started thinking, if I wore a red dress, maybe I was also going to be a victim. But he was not wearing red, he was wearing black. Sometimes they say the reason why people get struck by lightning is because it was following you since birth and you were born with the lightning effect. And apparently you have to go to a sangoma to go and cleanse you. Because we kept asking, how did the other guys survive? But it really educated me as well. When I see it starting to rain, I just go to the car, because when I think about that day, I think it could have been me. Sometimes I even wonder, could it be the shovels that caused the lightning strike? He was the only one who had the shovels in his hand.
One of the first cases which captured the imagination of the South African public happened in 1932. If one travels to Golden Gate National Park, one will come across 2 graves side by side, that of Valerie Wilcox and Johann Bestendig de la Harp. What happened was, on the 15th of December 1932, Valerie, who was 22 at the time, and Johann Bestendig de la Harp, who was going to celebrate his 21st birthday, left from the town of Clarence. There were 12 people who were traveling by ox wagon to the Mont aux Sources to celebrate Johann Bestendig de la Harp's 21st birthday. They had provisions within the ox wagons, such as biltong and boere biscuit. En route, Valerie found an old ladder, and she said, let's take this ladder, because one never knows if one may need it. They then stopped at the Basotho police post on the way up to Mont aux Sources to sign in. And later that day, on the 15th December 1932, Valerie Wilcox, Johann Bestendig de la Harp, and Johann's horse, whose name was Moscow, were traveling ahead of the ox wagon when lightning struck. Johann, Valerie, and the horse immediately fell to ground. The rest of the party immediately rushed to the couple. Valerie was declared dead immediately. Johann was apparently still alive, although was in severe pain. They used the ladder which Valerie had found at the foot of the mountain to transport Johann down to the Basotho police station. They offered him some brandy, which he apparently drank. That night, Johann died. Their graves may be found in the Golden Gate National Park, side by side. 12 years later, Valerie's brother, Carl Wilcox, erected a bronze plaque at the spot where the couple and the horse were killed by lightning. This was one of the first lightning cases in South Africa which captured the imagination of the public. It is most likely that Valerie, Johann, and the horse suffered direct lightning strike. This is what is known as the first mechanism of lightning strike, which is direct strike.
The second mechanism is probably less easy to understand, but it is what we would call touch potential. This is where lightning attaches to a particular object or structure. It could be a tree, it could be a metal structure, and you as a person, or it could be another piece of equipment, is physically touching that. Now, in what happens in that instance is part of the lightning current flows through the object that it's attached to, but some of it could also flow into you as the person touching it. And that's effectively touch potential. So the third injury or damage mechanism is what we call side flash. This is where an object, such as a tree, is struck by lightning, and the resultant flow of electric charge causes a voltage to develop and a subsequent flashover, and that will happen from the tree to the object or the person nearby the tree. The fourth well understood injury mechanism is what we call step potential. This is something that we would typically see with something like a cow or a horse or an animal sheltering nearby a tree, and the injury happens by current flowing through the feet up through the body and then down through the other feet. If it's a human being, you obviously need, the reason it's called step potential is it's from one foot to another foot, and we would have a voltage difference, a potential difference between that. The fifth injury mechanism is the upward streamer injury mechanism. This is one of the more recently documented ones. When I say recent, within the last couple of decades. This mechanism is where lightning doesn't attach directly to an individual or a structure, but it causes charge to move from a structure on the ground. And that charge and the collapsing of that charge is what causes the injury or damage.
The sixth mechanism of lightning injury is what is known as lightning explosive barotrauma. This was discovered by myself. Around lightning's luminous channel, there is a blast wave. The lightning channel is 30 to 50,000 degrees centigrade, which is about the heat of the surface of the sun. This superheats the air around the channel, and by means of Charles's law, causes expansion. And this air expansion positive pressure wave decays into sound, which we know as thunder. One can hear thunder from as far as 25 kilometers away. So one is dealing with a significant amount of pressure and injury. And this is known as the sixth mechanism of lightning injury. This explosive barotrauma-like effect causes bomb-like effects on its victims. If one looks at ground flash densities over South Africa, most of the ground flash densities happen over the escarpment, which is the Drakensberg. We have about 26 flashes per square kilometer per year over the Drakensberg, which is relatively high compared to the rest of the planet. Due to the fact that the ground is dry in our region, we have a lot of cloud to ground and ground to cloud strikes, which makes our region a very lightning prone region.
So thinking about lightning near mountains and the Drakensberg in particular, lightning is very much a function of the weather. Where there is a storm cloud, where there is rain, you're going to invariably have lightning. So if you look at the planet as a whole, most of the lightning activity would happen around the equator, where there's a measure called thunderstorm days. How many days of the year is there a storm? There are parts of the planet where it's almost the whole year is dominated by storm or cloud or rain activity. How do we make sense of the potential risk of lightning? As engineers, we like to measure, we like to know. One of the most important values that we use is called ground flash density. What we do is, in a fictitious piece of area, 1 square kilometer, so kilometer by kilometer, we would make a measurement to say how many times in 1 year would lightning attach to the ground in that square kilometer. And that's called ground flash density. Ground flash density is a very important value. We can use it to make a decision about what the risk in a particular area is. South Africa is interesting from a ground flash density point of view. On the one side, we've got Cape Town with hardly any activity, or for that matter, you think of the desert and the west coast where there is no cloud activity, to the Drakensberg or even some parts of Johannesburg where you're looking at values between 10 to 20 up to 30 flashes per square kilometer per year. So that would mean in 1 year, in an extreme part of South Africa, you could have 30 separate lightning events happening in a square kilometer of ground.
When it comes to lightning safety on mountains, the highest point is more at risk. However, lightning does not read textbooks. We've seen people struck at the foot of hills, halfway up the hill, and at the top of the hill. However, as a general rule of thumb and as a guideline, try and get away from the highest point during a thunderstorm.
I was so sad. Driving back home, I just started believing a lot in these taboos that go around lightning, because people pointed out that, yeah, but it wasn't raining that much, so how can the lightning strike him? There were a lot of questions, and I started also having questions that, is it true that maybe, someone can send lightning to strike you? Because I've heard about that before. I was just very sad.
People who believe that witches can send lightning distinguish between man-made lightning and natural lightning. So natural lightning is just the normal lightning created by the weather, but man-made lightning is specific lightning sent by a witch. Many people believe that mobile phones attract lightning. There's no scientific evidence of that. So a mobile phone in itself doesn't have something that specifically attracts lightning, and it also doesn't create an ionized channel that creates a preferential path for lightning to travel down. But still, you'll hear lots of people say they knew someone who was speaking on a mobile phone and then was struck dead by lightning. I think the belief comes from the time when we used to have landline telephones, and those phones were connected with wires to the poles and connected to the telephone exchanges with wires. And if any of those were struck by lightning, then a lightning impulse could travel down those wires and injure someone talking on a landline phone. But there's no evidence to suggest that mobile phones, for some reason, attract lightning. There are many myths of gods of lightning and goddesses of lightning in different cultures, but probably the most famous one is the Norse god of lightning, Thor, who had a big hammer, which when he hit something with that hammer, it would cause the sound of thunder. And of course, our day of the week, Thursday, is named after Thor, the Norse god of lightning.
Lightning does not read textbooks. We've had someone killed in a parking lot between high buildings that was due to positive upward lightning. We've seen someone killed in a flat through the window while having a bath. As we have seen in the St. Catherine's incident and the Witbank lightning tent incident, tents offer no protection to lightning. If you are in a tent, if you are camping, when thunder roars, get indoors. Get inside your car if you can. During a thunderstorm, do not seek shelter under trees. It is not a good idea. No place is safe outdoors in a thunderstorm. Even a soccer stadium is at risk from lightning during a thunderstorm. So if one has made enough bad mistakes and one finds oneself alone in the veld, or even worse, on the top of a mountain during an electrical thunderstorm, what does one do? Look, you have to try and find some kind of shelter. Look for an overpass or a bridge. Try to find some Eskom wires, stand directly under the wires. That is probably the best place to be. However, what do you do if there's no overpass, no bridge or no wires? What do? The theory is you want to crouch down to create the smallest area possible. you would want to be wet and not dry. If you're wet, you'd get flashover. If you're dry, you die. You'd also want to try and block your ears. A lot of my lightning strike cases have had ruptured eardrums, so try and block your ears. When thunder roars, get indoors.